I've noticed as I tune into Smuggling Hope, you mentioned a platform, heartsrenewed.org.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hearts Renewed has been like a project that I've been like working on for a number of years. So essentially, like a lot of people, for the most part, especially Catholic people, we have like this desire to do things perfectly. And most people in general, like they don't want to talk about or go for marriage counseling. I mean, it takes a high level of courage and it takes a high level of humility. Yeah. And frankly, most people don't want a third person getting involved with their marriage. If they're Catholic, maybe they'll trust a priest. But it's weird. And honestly, like, and I agree with people, like I would say if you do marriage counseling, you don't want that person, involved in your marriage for too long. Because once you bring a third person in to have an understanding of your relationship, things get weird.
You don't want to have there be a dependency. You don't want to have there be an imbalance between one or another spouse having their needs fulfilled.
Yeah, exactly. And just like the triangulation of it, right? Because then all of a sudden people are going to this third person when they need to be turning to each other and to God.
Right.
And so like, I realize that a lot of people would come to counsel, and especially like men for marriage counseling, it's hard because, again, they don't pay attention to a lot of like the domestic communication stuff because as men, we are externally focused. Work, protecting our home, protecting our finances, taking care of our children. And so a lot of this stuff, whether we're good at it or not, like it just makes people feel more vulnerable. And so a guy doesn't want to come in and show up to whether it's me or somebody else. And, if he can't do it perfectly, he just isn't going to come. He'll come up with a reason, right?
Because it's like it's pulling over and asking for directions, right?
Yeah. So like it's a weird dynamic, but obviously like we have really good people that just need kind of and sometimes they just need to have like resources or coaching or some version of that. And there's a lot of good stuff out there, but I just figured that there are patterns in all of these people's marriages that if I taught people how to use the patterns of success, right, when they fell in love, when they were in their honeymoon stage of the relationship, when they were communicating, taught them what they were doing, taught them how to pay attention to that. Well, they could do that together. They don't need me, right? They don't need a therapist, right? A lot of times the therapist is, the interpreter sometimes for this language. But you can go to a therapist with one problem and come out with 6, right? And so I'm in the only field that creates the problems or can create the problems that we say we treat. Not because we want to, but because, we just talk about...
Well, it's good for business.
Well, it is good for business. But in the other sense is that, again, turning people into the perfect consumer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean that's a PhD thesis for somebody who wants to do that.
We got some time.
Take out the diagnostic manual and just it should be called creating the perfect consumer. But I think
it'd be interesting to see like DSM 3, 4, and 5 side by side and just how many changes have happened. And it's like, have we really evolved that quickly in 5 decades?
Well, yeah.
But anyway, that's an aside.
That is an aside and a half, But I'm just saying, like, but for people, they want to know, can you help me? And they want to be able to. They need to have the ability to recognize what they're doing that's working. And so a lot of married people, like, they get good at trying to solve their problem, but that means they get good at just problem talk. They talk about their problems, and that deadens their ability to connect and communicate. So that program was designed for people to just be able to do the work at home. Whether they want to work with me or not, they can do that. But the program is an all-encompassing thing. People do it for the time that they think it's helpful.
Right.
But it really is to give people the keys to these basic things, these basic skills, so that they can bring themselves back to the people that they wanted to be in their marriage, design the marriage like an architect designs it. And not feel like that marriage is just a series of accidental experiences or, feel like that they are helpless. Because remember, like I tell people that come to see me, like the world right now wants people's marriages to fail because they're better consumers. It all goes back to you're a better consumer. If you're unhappy, you're going to be a better consumer if you're not relationally fulfilled in your marriage. You're just going to be hungry to buy more crap on Amazon, hungry to look at stuff you shouldn't online, hungry to go and buy the newest thing that'll make you seem like you're cool because you're unhappy. And again, and you take away meaning that there's no point to this. Well, now I'm going to look at pleasure even more intensely.
Sure, nihilism.
Nihilism, and so you see the rate. It's crazy. Like as I was driving here, I see I feel like the rate of fancy cars in America has gone up, which seems crazy to me. Like, because
Sure.
we don't live in the wealthiest part of the United States.
Along with our loans. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
well-
articles on that right now. Americans are paying more for their car payment than a mortgage or rent.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's crazy, and I hope they're all electric, man. But it's wild, but they're putting all of this effort into these things that will not satisfy those other two levels at all. And every form of marketing is trying to convince wives and husbands and children just to depend more on whatever's coming through the television, whatever's coming through their feed on their phone. And that's why they call it, as the joke was, like, that's why they call it programming. People are like, they feel like they need to respond by buying more useless stuff.
Sure.
And so again, this is I figured, try to compile some of this stuff and then, offer it to married couples so that they have an option, right? Maybe their husband or their wife doesn't want to do counseling. Maybe they feel like they have to do it on their own. Well, then they can do it on their own. They can do the program as one partner in the marital relationship. And that is enough sometimes just for people to have the confidence to change the dynamic, right?
I'm in regular conversation in the community, as Minister General of a young adult organization that's under our bishop. And just the other day, I was having a conversation with some wives at a birthday party where, they're struggling with the husband not being as involved or being as connected with his faith. And my heart always goes out to scenarios like that because obviously in the traditional model, which we know, of course, is under attack in this, era of Fatima, where the final battle will be against the family itself. That's why this is so needed. Of course, the man is supposed to be the head, but how would you say that maybe wives can plug into this to try to get the husband through the door in the first place, if that's the dynamic they're struggling with?
Well, I think a lot of times, like, so in general, like husbands, I mean, there's a lot of different things that are probably going on with it. But I want you to think, like, in general, we participate in things when we have confidence, right? Like if you like soccer, if you feel confident kicking it around, or at least you have some level of confidence,
right?
Or maybe you're just like, you at least have confidence that the people there are going to be nice to you or whatever it is. You're going to participate. But if you have very little confidence, you haven't gotten off the couch in a long time, and people invite you to play soccer, you're going to come up with any level of excuses to say no, to avoid it.
Sure.
And so what we want to do is we want to figure out how to, in many ways, increase the confidence of other people. So an odd thing, and it's very odd for a lot of times my clients, is I will ask them, because it's really about attention, right? I will ask them, the things that irritate you about your husband, you need to try to stop paying attention to them, right? And you need to give attention to the things that actually are reflective of the man that you wanted to be married to. And it's funny, years ago there was a woman and she wrote an article, and she's a animal behaviorist, and the title of the article was how do you train your husband? But she talked about, it was fascinating though.
Just
I learned
nag
a lot.
him till kingdom come, right?
No, she actually went through, it was brilliant. She went through how you get a chimpanzee to ride a skateboard. And she said that the first thing you do is you take the chimpanzee and you get a skateboard, and obviously the chimpanzee's in its cage, and you give it a skateboard and it freaks the heck out and it screams and it grabs the skateboard and bangs it.
Plot twist.
And then eventually the chimpanzee calms down, and when the chimpanzee calms down, you give the chimpanzee a piece of mango. And you don't give them bananas, I guess, because chimps or monkeys in
Probably
general
have so many associations with that already.
well, I guess they like mango better. It's the most rewarding fruit for a monkey, right? So what
I
they
learned
do,
something today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what they do with behavioralists for animals is they script out, like a movie director would script out the behavior chain of the animal, right? So the animal approaches the skateboard, piece of mango. The animal approaches the skateboard and sits on it, another piece of mango. So the animal learns that these behaviors are favorable. Now, what we do as humans, though, because we're the only storytelling animals.
We're not just
right?
Pavlovian,
No, we
B.F.
are not.
Skinner.
We are not. No.
Yeah.
Skinner's funny though, man. We could probably talk about him. He tried to go back to his radical Puritanism, at the end of his life.
Good for him.
Yeah, I tell you, he's a trip.
Find yourself, you know?
Yeah, but my point about the whole the human beings are, when we want to change stuff, we speak in a language, and the language, when we communicate our needs, it sounds like criticism. And,
Okay.
And so, like, what the spouse communicates.
Not that my wife or I have ever done that to each other, but
Well, I'm not gonna. It's a good thing that hopefully she'll never see this. So, but I'm just kidding. But I think like we all have legitimate needs, but when we communicate them, like what the other person hears is a judgment, because we're somehow not where they want us to be. How come you didn't take the garbage out? Is heard by why are you complaining about me? I don't even like take it rationally. And then wives or husbands will say you're too sensitive. Husbands say about their wives they're too sensitive. Wives say about their husband they're too sensitive, which again is another criticism.
Sure.
So we get a lot of what we hate. And so, like, when we think about it, like, if we think about, like, the wife that you talked about, or any of the women that they want their husbands to be more interested in these things, I want you to think, we don't know whether or not they're interested or not. In general, like, remember, like, people are designed to be fulfilled by God. So they actually want to sacrifice. Men want to sacrifice it. They want to, do these masculine things. They might not know how to do it. They might not have seen it by their own fathers. They might not have had a father, right? I mean, so. But if one thing I would suggest is that the women, as they think about the behaviors that the men are doing that are pleasing, and then try to figure out how to either express appreciation or communicate that these are things that are very favorable. And men can do this with women too. But it's really directing and disciplining your attention away from this other stuff.
these like judgment statements.
Yeah, because that's the dangerous thing. I mean, like, for instance, if I come home, right? So if I come home and I tell my wife, like, today I'll come home and she may be packing up because we're going to be leaving on vacation and the house is a mess. And I go, why is the house a mess? How come the kids left the kitchen a disaster? What is going on? Like, why is this place always disgusting whenever? And then my wife is going to be like,
Lay it on, man.
Yeah, my wife is going to be like, wow, you were a jerk, to put it mildly. And she may not say it, but she's going to avoid me like the plague, and she's going to feel very hurt, even if I was just tired or hungry or a miserable person for whatever reason. But think about what I actually desired, right, as a person. Is really like if I would have come home and said, honey, I feel very like, a little lonely, or I feel exhausted, or I really want to connect to you alone without the kids. Is there a time for us to do that? Or maybe it's that, honey, I want to come up with a plan so that there's more order, so that you're not stressed out and I'm not stressed out, because
And we
the
can
kids
be more present to each other then.
Yeah. But that's not what was communicated. What was communicated was this blatant, like this verbal vomit of judgment, and the other person can't hear it or tolerate it.
They're not exactly going to be interested in translating it to what you really meant.
Yeah, and so again, if this is what people are experiencing in communication, why would they want to sit down with a third person and do this in front of a third person and judge each other, right? So that's why people are terrified of marriage counseling or couples work or whatever. And so, like, what I found to do in general is that I'm very deliberate about avoiding this, because we don't have to talk about this stuff. Specifically, we can get at what people want without constantly provoking judgment, because people don't need. We don't need to necessarily talk about what we hate. We need to talk about with our spouse what's alive in us.
How does that make you feel?
Oh man, but that statement, make you feel that already is error prone, right? Because nobody can make you feel anything.